Hello everybody and welcome back to another Kings of War battle report. I'm Visibly Riley, and today we have Empire of Dust versus the Brotherhood. This battle was fought at 20-50 points and the scenario was Dominate. So first off, let's go with my opponent's Brotherhood army, which begins with an Undaunted Crusaders formation. That includes an Exemplar of the Brotherhood, this one has the Diadem of Dragonkind, and 2 Order of the Brotherhood regiments. I know it used to give Pathfinder, I think it now gives +1 speed. Then we have a Horde of Valayan Bowmen with a Heart-Seeking Chant, an Order of Redemption regiment with Brew of Haste. That's actually wrong, that is the Blessing of the Gods, not Brew of Haste. So I'm missing 10 points from the army, that's where it was. Then we have an Order of the Brotherhood Horde with Brew of Strength, an Order of the Forsaken Horde with Blade of Slashing, a Devoted with Heal 4 and Shroud of the Saint, an Exemplar Forsaker that says Kevinar's Flying Hammer. That is not correct, that is the Mace of Crushing, a Forsaken Beast with Breath Attack 10 and Regen 5+, and a Valayan Siege Artillery to close it out. My thoughts on this army are... excuse me, pretty much that it's okay. It looks a lot like I used to have a Bretonnian army and I want to play Kings of War, can you show me how? Which is a little weird because 1, I know my opponent never played Warhammer, so that was not a thing, and 2, I also know that they like to just sort of throw shit at the wall and see what sticks. So with that said, to optimize this army, I would drop the Valayan Siege Artillery completely. I would probably try to get a second Devoted with Martyr's Prayer into the army, which I think you could do by making that swap out. Well, you need 5 points, but there's a lot of 5-point items here. And lastly, I would try to find some way to make the Valayan Bowmen just 2 regiments instead of a horde. I don't see the point in that horde. It's only hitting on a 5+ and it's too easy to disrupt. I'd prefer to just have things that can grab table corners. So anyway, those are my thoughts. And moving forward onto the Empire of Dust list. So this one is a weird one. I asked my opponents whether they wanted to see a normal list or if they wanted to see something that was a bit jankier, and they chose jank, so here we are. So starting out, I have a Skeleton Warrior Horde with the Banner of the Griffin, followed by a second Skeleton Warrior Horde with the Dragon Shard Shield. Then I have 4 Enslaved Guardian regiments, all of whom have the Drain Life 6 spell. I have 2 Cursed High Priests, both of whom have Heal 4. One has Mirrodin's Amulet of the Fireheart, and the other has Shroud of the Saint. I have Mortibris, and then 2 Reanimated Behemoths, both of whom have the Light Balefire Catapult upgrade, a Monolith, and finally a Soul Snare. So the idea of this list is pretty self-evident. You put the Monolith somewhere and you try to get as much drain life off as possible, especially with the new Soul Snare changes. I think that this is really good. Maybe. The new Soul Snare I have been having great luck with. Drain Life 10 at 18 inches is really good, and getting that heal going is really good. So I don't know, I thought it might be fun to do this Enslaved Guardian thing, although this is definitely a prototype, which you will see my problems with piloting it later. So moving forward, let's get into the game. So sitting here, let's talk about the scenario. So Dominate's a pretty simple one. You basically have a center point on the table, and then radiating out 12 inches from them is sort of the bubble you want to get into. Having the majority of your unit's footprint in the bubble puts them in it, and then you want the highest unit strength in it to win it. So I'm trying to get all this stuff, right, into the center, so that's my setup. And let's talk about the terrain a little bit. I know a lot of people were saying that I don't use enough terrain. I'm trying to rectify it, but I play in a local game shop, and you know, I can't get there till after work, and so you know, you never know what you're gonna get. But I got there a little early this week to try to get as much as possible, and I just got a hot text message. But anyway, so let's talk about this. We've got a height flat water piece down here in the lower right hand corner. Above it we have a height 2 hill. To the left of that we have a height 5 Fist of Justice. Below that we have a height 1 obstacle attached to a height 2 hill. Since Dominate is kind of king of the hill, this is a little apropos. Below that we have a height 6 forest under my army. To the left of that we have another height 6 forest. Above it we have a height 6 obstacle. attached, or not obstacle, impassable, attached to a height 1 obstacle. And above that we have a, height flat piece of rep terrain. And finally we have, in my opponent's deployment zone, another small height 6 forest. So that's the idea of the terrain. It's a pretty simple one, but we'll see. Let's get on to the armies. So over here on the far left, we have, starting with my opponent, we have the Exemplar Forsaker with the Mace of Crushing. You can even see the token that says so. Behind it, the Villain Siege Artillery. Right here is the horde of Brotherhood Knights with the Brew of Strength. More of them. Right back here, hiding a little bit, is the Devoted with Shroud and Heal, so heal 7. In front of it is the Exemplar of the Brotherhood with Diadem and Dragonkind, or the Green Knight. Then we have a horde of Lane Bowmen with the Heart-Seeking Chant. Over here, this is the first unit of Order of the Brotherhood, which is all horses, I guess, which is in the formation. And then behind them are the Redemption Knights with Blessing of the Gods. And then, the second unit of Brotherhood Knights, and then the Exemplar Beast, which is this sweet little snail. It's actually funny, I was complimenting that my opponent managed to get this snail onto a 40mm base, and then I told him that it's still the wrong base, and he was a little perplexed by that, because, man, did he think that was a 50 for a while. And lastly, on the far right flank for me are the Forsaker Knights. Or what are they, Order of the Forsaken? Yeah, Order of the Forsaken. Now let's move on to the Empire Dust. So right here we have my first reanimated behemoth with the catapult. It's actually facing the wrong way. It should be facing this way. But I turned it on its side like that mostly so it can gain a little distance if I want to get the surge going. And I wasn't terribly afraid of him rushing me just yet. To the left of it, we see my first horde of skeleton warriors. These look suspiciously like bowmen, and trust me, I do have enough skeletons for this, but I just put out the bowmen for now. It's fine. Behind them, we see 1 and 2 regiments of Enslaved Guardians. Now, these I actually don't have enough models for, and shopped here like $30 a model, and I really do not like the Mantic models, so I'll have to figure something out for that. Over here, we see the next 2 units of Enslaved Guardians. One is in the front next to my skeleton warriors that are suspiciously wielding bows. Behind them, the other Enslaved Guardians are the Yeti models I use. This right here is my Cursed High Priest with Mirrodin's Amulet. And in the back here, you can see my second horde of skeleton warriors with the Banner of the Griffin. And then in between them, right here is the High Priest with the Shroud of the Saint, and then this lucky fellow is Mortibrus. So that's the idea. Over here, this weird nonsense thing, that is just what I ended up using for my Soul Snare, and the final reanimated behemoth. So that's the deployment minus the monolith, which you saw in the first picture, but I'll point it out anyway when we get to the next. So turn 1. Turn 1 ends up going to the Brotherhood. First off, you can see that my monolith is deployed forward a little bit. I'm not sure about this. I deployed it basically so my units can, since I'm going to start casting Drain Life probably on turn 2 on average, I placed it so I can still get some spells, some +2 to my spells for turn 1 and then get it for turn 2 and then not really care. But in retrospect, I probably pushed it a bit too far forward as I'm both playing against a very fast army, and I can't actually clear it turn 1, so I've kind of trapped myself with it. But anyway, that's a thing for the future. You can see the Brotherhood army pretty much just rolls forward. The 2 units of the Brotherhood regiments just angle a little bit to protect against, I guess, nothing. They can't really, well, they're not really protecting against anything. I can't get over there. The Horde really pushes forward as far as it can, really threatening my lines early. And then the Order of the Forsaken just spin around this side to make it so forcing out a charge. Now, there's a lot of weird Wind Blast shenanigans I can probably do here, but I don't understand them well enough to really push it. Then the Exemplar Forsaken right here, this little Flappy Bird, is in It's in an interesting place for me, as this angle is really threatening a lot more of this center than I'm willing to admit, or at the time that I really saw. So yeah, interesting turn one, but there's not a lot to do when you're just knights. So we move on to turn one for, well, here's one thing, which is this friggin' exemplar fires off into my monolith. Even with its defense 5, ends up taking 3 wounds. So yeah, I take 3 wounds, but I'm a dash, I think I'm a dash 18 right now, because I don't think I'm within 6 inches of my unit there. So yeah, dash 18 means that doesn't do anything. And we move on to turn 1 for the Empire of Dust. I move some of my skeletons forward a little bit. These warriors are with Dragon Shard Shield. I would have loved to have just halted with them and maybe gone for a double surge, but I just couldn't figure out the angle while moving my army. It just shows my inexperience with this level of jank. So yeah, I move forward with these guys. I just basically want to go into these knights, do 1 wound to them to turn off their Thunderous, and then just sit on them. So that's the plan. Everything else just turns to face. I've got my reanimated behemoth ready to mess with these guys. Also, this Flappy Bird can go into my reanimated behemoth, but it'll land in the woods, and I'm def 6, so it'll be 4s and 4s, I want to say, to wound me, so I'm not really worried about that. I do make a few errors, which I'll point out later with this movement, but yeah, everything else just sort of bunches up. Over here on my right, I'm very trapped by where I place that monolith, because I can't clear it with these enslaved guardians, and I think in the future I'll probably just place it and then place my army around it, right? So I don't have to move through it. But yeah, I didn't do that this time. So I end up getting trapped there, which means the Soul Snare doesn't want to leave the forest because these knights are too close. So it's using both my Enslaved Guardians and my Monolith as cover to get some shots off, but they are height 4 on top of this hill, so I can still shoot at them. And then I use my reanimated behemoth. It's just slightly too far into the woods, so if these Forsaken Knights charge in, they're going to be hindered. So the plan here, they've got a flank charge on my Soul Snare, but they can't actually fit. They've got a front charge onto this unit and a front charge onto this unit. And if they charge the reanimated behemoth, they'll end up being disordered. If they charge into my Enslaved Guardians, that's sort of limiting. So the point is to make it so you can't just take this here, take some knights here, and then take some knights here and just kill all my units, right? 1 by 1. So instead I want them to be trapped up a little bit, just like I am. So anyway, moving forward with, yeah, with Surge, I end up getting, I get the Surge off into these knights, just looking for the 1 hit, although I am only hitting, I'm hitting on 6s here. So Mortibrus actually has to, the Corn Dog is here because Mortibrus has to cast his Bane Chant to give them a bit more oomph, because I need to do that 1 wound to turn off their Thunderous, or I think they'll just do too many wounds to me. And yeah, at the end of combat, I do 2 wounds. Don't boxcar it, but I did turn off their Thunderous, so that's the big thing. And here is the end of turn shot. Yeah, I do quite a few wounds to this guy with my Soul Snare. It's Drain Life. And there must be a line this way. I'm not sure how the line of sight is looking right now, but because this is height 4, the monolith is height 4. It looks like he'd be guarded. Anyway, so I do a couple of wounds to this guy. I end up doing enough to heal up my monolith to full, but I do not get a waiver. Unfortunately, none of my other spells are either A in range or B, or my spells and shooting don't really do a whole lot. I do get 1 big Wind Blast off on the snail, pushing it back, I think 4 inches. I would have preferred to Wind Blast these, but I just couldn't figure out how to move the Ushabti over here, or the Enslaved Guardians. So, yep, it is how it is, and we move forward onto turn 2. So turn 2, yeah, turn 2 charges, that's how knights roll. And on the left, you can see the horde of Order of the Redemption go into the skeletons with Dragon Shield, or Dragon Shard Shield. I didn't get to pop that, so I'm not def 6 right now. But they've got, let's see, they've got 30 attacks, that's around 20 hits, and then they only wound me on 3s, right? So, you know, that's 12-ish wounds? Right? That's not the worst. or I guess that's not 12-ish wounds. But anyway, it's not that many wounds, right? I don't know. I'm not super worried about it, but dice do happen. It's not the best. This is something I didn't see, which is if we roll a picture back or two, this exemplar or Forsaken guy can go into the flank of my Ushabti, and I think I actually ended up bumping these somehow, but yeah, I had these skeletons here, and maybe I just wasn't paying attention to them because I saw that and I wasn't thinking the half turn ahead that I needed to not get flank charged. But on this flank charge, he does end up landing into the forest, so it is hindered. So my opponent has to take another knight charge into there to make sure to finish the job. Some more knights go into my monolith. It is now healed and at a -19 due to the Banner of the Griffin. So hopefully it sticks around for a turn, although maybe I don't want it there anymore. So yeah, these Order the Forsaken go into the front of my Enslaved Guardians. I'm not sure if I should be worried about that. I mean, I should be worried about that, but how worried, right? So they've got 18 attacks, they've got 12 hits, 8 wounds, right? And I'm a -15, so they'll need a 7 twice to kill me. Not the best odds and not the worst. So this one's a bit riskier, but I had to do something. So anyway, with my opponent shooting, they end up doing 1 wound to this reanimated behemoth. I think with the Villain Bowman, I know that this thing didn't hit. I've got Mortibris. I think Mortibris is right here. So I've got my 6-inch stealth bubble like this. I think that it goes out to these 2 units, right? It just sort of stops there. So anyway, that's what ends up happening. And here, yeah, showing off this combat, these guys delete my skeletons. It is ridiculous. So they've got 30 attacks. They hit and wound me with like, it's not that bad. They hit and wound me with like 18-ish of them. And then my opponent just rolls 11-11. So, you know, goodbye to them. This is another unfortunate combat. It's not the most unexpected, especially as I didn't see that flank charge. But 14 attacks on 4s and 4s, so you've got like 3 to 4-ish wounds from the exemplar, and then the knights I think have 16 attacks, right? So we've got 11-ish hits there, and then they're wounding me on 3s, so they've got another 8-ish wounds, we'll say. So like 11 wounds there. So yeah, they just pop right through these guardians, which isn't that, it's not, you know, it's not bad dice. I just didn't see this flank coming. It's a problem with Surge, right? You gotta think at least half a turn ahead. And yeah, they're gone. With this combat, thankfully, my opponent rolls 1 under what he needs. I'm a -15. My opponent does 8 wounds to me, which isn't that bad, onto my Enslaved Guardians. But the Enslaved Guardians, due to the Banner of the Griffin, end up staying around, so that's great. The Monolith takes 11 wounds, which is pretty ridiculous. I mean, those knights only have 16 attacks, and I'm -5, and he did 11 wounds. But it doesn't die, so, you know, small miracles and all that. So it's still around. Unwavered, even though that doesn't do anything. And yeah, that's just another picture of that. And we move forward to the end of the turn shot into, or no, the turn 2 shot for Empire of Dust. So now the Empire of Dust are looking for a little bit of revenge. I mean, combat's already formed. This is a dominate scenario, so I need to get the hell out of my deployment zone at least, and into the middle of the table. So on the left, I end up taking the reanimated behemoth into the Green Knight. Hopefully I can pop him, since he's taken like 4-ish wounds, 4 or 5 wounds right now. I can pop him and then run into these guys. If I don't pop him, I'll just lose this reanimated behemoth, because that horde will charge me in the flank. So yeah, that's the plan there. I pivot these Enslaved Guardians because their leader point is just in the flank of this exemplar Forsaker. So I can cast Drain Life and charge into it. So that's sort of the whole point of the army. I do the same thing with these Enslaved Guardians, who just pivot so they're in the flank of these knights, so they can cast Drain Life and then charge, since they will hit this corner before they hit my monolith. These these ones can't quite do it, as one, they're disordered, and two, I just kind of want to get a charge going. So I go in with them into the Forsaker Knights, or Order of the Forsaken, and then I send my Reanimated Behemoth in as well, rather than risking taking a shot and getting a surge. Since I already have 2 surges going right now, I really don't want to have 3, right? I want to have 1 surge in the bank, basically. Just in case I have, so these are, this one's a 2-inch, this one is probably also a 2-inch, but I have failed 1-inch charges before with 15 to 20 dice. So don't take it, and I'm not saying like, I bet my, I bet everything on that, but it's basically I don't want to overcommit, right? I don't want to double 1 in the spell phase. So anyway, that is the end of that. With my shooting, my Soul Snare, I think I end up taking it into these knights up here, I want to say. Questionable, but I go in there. I'm just looking to slap a bit of damage around so I can heal up my Enslaved Guardians. And yeah, with my shooting, so the Drain Life here, I do 1 wound to this, so pretty cool. And then with this Drain Life, I do 0. No, yeah, I do 0. And then with my little, what is it, the Soul Snare, I have a little sliver of line of sight onto these knights, so I cast there and I do 6. So the Soul Snare continues overproducing while all the other Drain Lives do what Drain Life generally does for me, which is nothing. So yep, pretty cool there. I end up casting, I get both my 1-inch surges, so I go for a big heal onto the Monolith, and I think I only healed like 2 wounds off the Monolith, but I do end up getting these Enslaved Guardians down to 1 wound, which is great, and I take the wound off this guy, although I might have done that in the combat. We'll see. This is an upside down picture for some reason. You can see, yeah, this is a very messy shot. I charge this thing in the flank. It looks like it's facing me, but that's just because we end up putting it there. And I was thinking with my Drain Life plus the charge, let's see, it's 6 attacks on 4s and 4s, right? So I do like 1 or 2 damage. And then with the flank charge, it's only on 4s because I'm charging through the forest. So I've got 9-ish hits. I wound on a 3, so I've got another 6-ish wounds, right? So 7, 8 is pretty good. Unfortunately, I kill him on the first roll, which means I have to re-roll it, and then I roll like a 2 or, a 3. And so, yeah, a little unfortunate. I would have much preferred to have a Waver than have this friggin' bird alive, but you get what you gets. My Reanimated Behemoth ended up killing off the Green Knight, so that's great, or the Exemplar Forsaker. No, not Forsaker, Exemplar the Brotherhood. So that thing's gone. I charge into the front of these knights. I do 5 damage to them, so very, very hot rolling with the big cats, the battle cats. So that's cool. The other charges, I do end up taking these Enslaved Guardians and wipe out the 1st Regiment of Brotherhood. The issue is that I can't, since I ended up sliding in perfectly in this gap between my Monolith and them, I end up sliding too far. Meaning I can either face over here and get flank charged by knights because I have a bit of an overhang, right? Or I can, or I'll be flush, right? Because I'll push back at the end of combat. Or I can try to overrun to get out of their friggin' line of sight. So I end up taking the overrun, and thankfully I do make it far enough away, because these knights are a little. Actually, they're not too wide. They could definitely corkscrew here. I must be out of line of sight. I don't know. Anyway, moving forward, and then the Order of the Forsaken. I end up doing 9 wounds to him with the combined charge, which is respectable. The Reanimated Behemoths have 9 attacks on 4s, so 4s and 2s. So, I do like 4-ish wounds on average. And then I've got the Enslaved Guardians with 9 attacks on, again, no, it's a counter charge. So they're on 3s and 3s, right? So, I do 4 or 5 damage there too. So getting 9, pretty average. I do end up killing these with a lucky roll as well, and then I have to reroll it, and I don't even get the Waver. So stupid break checks. I just need you wavered, not dead. You can die next turn. But yep, that's the way it goes, and we move on to turn 3. So turn 3, Yep, the knights continue charging. So we've got on the left, we've got the big horde charging into my reanimated behemoth, looking to finish the job. So this guy can charge into my enslaved guardians if he wants with a counter charge, or just go for this really cool line I gave him because I'm so good at playing. So yeah, he can just charge into this cursed high priest. It's not the end of the world because he is charging through, or they are charging through a force, so that'll be hindered, and I've taken away all the thunderous charge. So 7 attacks on 4s and 3s. Hopefully I don't die. Still, losing a spellcaster, or losing a turn of spellcasting is not great. And that's that. So you can see, yeah, the horde goes in here. The big griffin goes into my cursed high priest. These guys go into my monolith. And now that I'm looking at it, I wonder why he didn't just... It must be a line of sight thing where he couldn't see these guys. Because now looking at it, I mean... my opponent can just pivot, right? There's enough, yeah. He could back these guys up, or they already were backed up, and then just pivot in the spot, clip this corner, and then slide in, right? So it must be a line of sight issue. Anyway, they go into my monolith looking to finish the job. We see Snaily finally get into a fight, so Snails plus the Order of the Forsaken go into my enslaved guardians, again looking to kill them off. They are fully healed right now due to a mix of life leech and drain life, but you know, you could pop through them. And here is the end of combat. So we've got on the left, you can see the horde does end up killing my reanimated behemoth. That's great for me. Only managing 6 wounds, so looks like my opponent needed a 10 twice because I've got a priest here. He does go into the priest, only does 2 wounds to it, and doesn't get the kill, so that's good for me. My poor positioning is not punished. I end up taking a couple wounds with my skeletons from the stupid Villain bowmen, so they do 2 to me, and then Snaily plus the Order of the Forsaken easily kill off my enslaved guardians. It's actually pretty messy. I think they do more. I think they put me on double ones or above double ones. It was bloody. So yeah, they just walk right through them. And the Order of the Forsaken I don't think can do anything but just stare forward. I mean, they could look this way, but that's terrible. And then the snail just travels forward as far as it can, keeping that 1-inch gap from my soul snare. So that is the end of Brotherhood turn 3. Let's go on to Empire Dust. So the Empire Dust, things are getting a little dicey. I decide now that I can't really do anything about this horde. Every turn, by the way, all the wounds that I've been doing, the devoted the devoted right here is just healing all of them. So I think my opponent healed 10 or 11 wounds so far, just nailing them. They're all gone. And then, yeah, so it's not the best. On this one, oh, there's the devoted, yeah. So, yeah, so they're at full strength. I decide that I can't really do anything about them. So instead, I'll just try to kill off what I can right now, and then just pivot around and let them get another turn of killing. There's still only 3 unit strength at the end of the game. So I take this unit of enslaved guardians. I go into the flank of the Exemplar Forsaker. That is, I was planning to just go for the surge here, but 1, I only have 2 surges this turn because I got charged, and 2, I need them out of the way so these skeletons can just charge into the snail. So that's the reasoning there. The other ones, I could have gone for that drain life plus surge plan, but at the end of the day I decide that just screw it, I'll just take the charge. And my my cursed high priest gets in there looking to, you know, staff some questions, I guess. My other enslaved behemoth just sits in front of the Order of the Forsaken, looking to lob some shots back here. I think I shot my catapult at these guys. Yep, and the Soul Snare has plenty of targets. This is height 3, I can see that. That's height 4, these are height 4, these are height 2. I can probably draw a line to here. Like, I can see any of these things except for the Horde, which I don't really care about. So, and then the archers are out of range, as is this this Villain catapult, which is doing nothing in this entire game. So, yeah, I've got plenty of targets. and we'll see how that goes. I'm looking for a surge from here onto the reanimated behemoth, and then Mortimerus will go for the surge onto my cat, since this cat decides to not charge into these knights, instead has a juicy flank here. Unfortunately, no shot because the light balefire has a minimum range of 12, so but still, it's a good flank charge. This is showing up, yeah, so I go for the shots or the drain life onto the Forsaken Beast. The idea is that I think the knights, if we go back a picture, I think these knights will probably get picked off by this cat in the flank. They've already got 6 wounds on them. So yeah, I go for that. And then these ones, I really hope are killed off. And then I don't really have, so basically I don't really have any shots that I think are super impactful, right? Except for on the beast, or this is the most impactful, because I need these combats that are mathematically in my favor to go my way, or I'll probably lose the game anyway. So instead I go for just the highest probability of winning still, rather than going for a draw, and I just I end up slapping 5 wounds onto the snail, because screw the snail, and I heal up something. I don't think the skeletons can finish that. They're only hitting on a 6, so excuse me. Yeah, I do end up getting the surge with my reanimated behemoth into these Forsaken Knights. Looks like I didn't hit the catapult shot either. And here is the end of the turn. So starting on the right this time, my reanimated behemoth blows right through the Order of the Forsaken Knights and then turns to face the snail, because actually I think I rolled the snail first. I rolled the skeletons into the snail. I do 2 wounds with the skeletons. I haven't fixed their wound count yet, but I do 2 wounds to it, and I get a waiver there. So a very lucky waiver, looking for an 8. Again, I don't really want to break things. I can take 2 turns. I can take my time. Wavering is big. So I get the waiver there. That's great. I can use the snail as cover now for my reanimated behemoth, which keeps these knights in my front, and they can't land because of the snail. Even if the snail backs up over here, it's just not helpful. Maybe he can land there. Who knows? But I don't think he can. So I'm using them as cover. My other cat ends up killing off the Brotherhood Knights that were in the front here with 6 wounds already on them. And then the way I pivot is this unit here, right? So they are in my rear. They can see me. They can see this just a little corner. And then they are in my butt. But this gap is not big enough for them to fit in. So when I kill off the Exemplar Forsaker, I reform my enslaved guardians to just make it impossible for them to fit here. So they can't charge into the facing that they're in, thus they cannot charge the cat. The cat can get charged in the front by knights, or in the, I guess, the flank by archers. Don't really care too much about that. But I think this is my best move, and that's what I go for. And we move on to turn 4. So turn 4, we've got the horde on the left going into one of my regiments of enslaved guardians. They're probably dead. I mean, it's, let's see, that's 30 attacks on 4s and 4s and 3s. So yeah, that's 10-ish wounds. That's not great. So yeah, I'm just kind of sacrificing this unit off. I'll probably start throwing my characters under the bus next, just to slow them down, keep them over there. My opponent ends up taking this is the Order of the Redemption into my skeletons, and that's an interesting one. I think that's sort of a go for broke moment, because if they'd gone into the Battle Cat up here, they're hitting on, I think, 3s with 18 attacks with Elite, and then wounding me on 4s. So I don't know. I just have so much heal in this list that all this like pip damage is not sticking. So if they go here, they can get flank charged by Battle Cats. If they go here, or the big cat, if they go into Battle Cat, they can still get flank charged. Or I could maybe surge shenanigans. There's just a lot. So my opponent goes for broke and goes into the skeletons. I think the smarter move would have been to just back up, take a cat charge, and hope it just doesn't play out for me. But that's what they go for. And here is the combat. Yeah, my opponent does very well, or at least does pretty well. Ends up putting 14 wounds onto me. I'm a dash 23, kills me on the first roll, but on the reroll fails it. So thankfully my skeletons are not dead, because that would have been pretty backbreaking if they'd been able to kill this. And then it looks like they've got a clean line. No, if they overran, they would have just eaten a flank here, but they dodged these. But I do have surge, so who knows. With the regen, the snail regens like 2 or 3 wounds, so pretty good there. And moving forward, yeah, here's the disappointment of the game, I think, for my opponent, which is he goes into these enslaved guardians, only manages 7 wounds, which is pretty bad. And I didn't get a picture of it, but he only hit 7 times total, just all of them wounded. Thankfully for me, still doesn't nail it on the kill, so he just gets to back up. So that's great. That buys me a huge turn 5 with just using these enslaved guardians again. And that's the end of the turn. So we move on to Empire of Dust, turn 4. So on the right, things are a bit simpler. I take my skeletons and go into the front of the Order of the Redemption. I take my enslaved guardians and just sort of wheel around the outside so I can get some drain life going. My reanimated behemoth goes to the other flank to get a shot. I take my battle cat and go into the flank of the snail since I have nothing to shoot at. And then all of my wizards just sort of bank around, or just sort of hiding over here. I need them to be thrown under the bus eventually, but I've got 1-2 units to go first, so meh. My opponent does now have, I believe, a shot on Mortibris with the rocks, with the Valain siege artillery, but I guess that's the risk I was willing to take. The one thing about shooting here is that my reanimated behemoth is just out of 12 inches from this devoted, so I've got a clean shot, and yeah, it ends up being that all my drain life, so I take this drain since she's height 2 on the hill, and I've got just a small, I've got a sliver line of sight, or maybe this ended up getting moved again, who knows. But I've got a line of sight here to shoot shooter with drain, and then I've got one more drain and then a catapult, right? And I go for it. I think in the end I decide that this cannot see her and goes for something else, and then my drain here goes in, does 3 wounds, which isn't the best, but then I nail her in the head with a rock, which is great since it only hits on a 6. Hit her in the head with a rock and end up doing 3 more wounds to her, which kills off the devoted, which is great. With my surges, I get the clean surges into the flank that I was looking for to kill off the Order of the Redemption, and yeah, this is the end of the combat. Yeah, you can see I'm still on, well, I got 1 wound back from Life Leech, but this thing must have just missed then, or maybe I just healed someone else, but yeah, didn't do too well there. And finally I reform basically to protect against the archers. So this reform protects all of my wizards that are not Mortibris, and then this reform gets me into line of sight and range of the archers. I again waver the snail by charging it in the flank, so that's funny, it's been wavered for 2 turns now. Basically it charged in, killed one of my enslaved guardians, and then has just been wavered this game. So here is the end of the turn shot. These guys, and oh, that's what I did. I went for the drain on the big knights. Yeah. So I go for the drain here. I heal them up a fair amount with the mix of these enslaved guardians who shot at the devoted and this thing that shot at them. So I get them down to 2 wounds, and then they heal 1 with their, well, that plus an actual casting of heal. But I get them down to 1 wound, so not the best rolling with my spells that turn, but you know, nothing to really complain about in the end, since right now I might still be losing because that's unit strength 3. I think they're in, and then I have 1, 3, yeah, so he's got 3, 6, 7 unit strength, and then I have 2, 3, 4 unit strength. I don't think the skeletons are in, so right now my opponent is winning. Moving on to turn 5. So turn 5, let's see if he can hold on to it. The horde of knights go back into my enslaved guardians, looking to finally finish them off. The snail just backs up again because it's wavered, and this giant rock shoots and misses at my skeletons, hoping to kill them since they're already sitting on 13 wounds. Pretty good plan. I think the Villain bowmen also shoot at my skeletons and do nothing, so that's funny. It's just, oh man, Villain bowmen, what a mess. Maybe they couldn't see. Maybe they couldn't see due to my monster in this thing. Whatever they shoot at, they do not hit. So, yeah. So the horde this time manages to kill off my enslaved guardians. I did consider going back a picture, not charging with the enslaved guardians to make it so this would still be a hindered charge. But at the end of the day, I went like, well, I've got all this drain life. And and I have another Bane Chant if I want, so I could waver that horde and then kill it. So right now I just got a little greedy, and I had a contingency plan anyway with this wizard here ready to take the fall for me. So moving on, yeah, they get killed off pretty easily, and we move on to turn 5 for the Empire Dust. Things start really going fast now, as there aren't that many units left for the Brotherhood. So at the start of turn 5, I end up taking my enslaved guardians and I go into the archers, just looking to slow them down. Killing them would be great, but right now that's not the operative plan. I take Battle Cat, go back into the snail. Let's see if we can get another waver. I take this wizard. So this wizard walks in front of the horde, right? This is greater than 6 inches. So the overrun cannot make it to me. And then the plan is to just have the skeletons stare off against the horde. They'll be the next in once I get some heals onto them, since these guys will have to overrun pretty I'm not even sure he can get 6 to get out of these woods. So that's the idea. I take my drain life and go for the snail, I want to say, because it's, again, the most effective plan, as I don't think I'm going to kill off this horde. So I got the drain there, and then I've got Mortibrus and these 3 wizards basically all just casting heal onto my horde here. So moving on. This guy's going for death, and we get to the end of the combat, or the end of the turn. So again, the snail is not dead, but again, the snail is wavered, so that's just getting kind of ridiculous. You can see my skeletons are only down. My skeletons are only down to 3 wounds now, so I healed 10 off, pretty good. I end up doing a couple wounds to the Villain bowmen, but not enough to waver them, although it is enough to turn off their shots. And my poor wizard is about to get curb stomped by some horses. And turn 6 rolls around. So turn 6, horses charge into my Cursed High Priest looking for some revenge, while the Villain bowmen do the same with my enslaved guardians, and the Forsaken Beast just backs up due to it being wavered. So it's a pretty simple turn. The horses kill off my wizard and advance forward a little bit, just looking for a turn 7. And yeah, the archers do 2 wounds to me, which is pretty funny because it's more wounds than they've done the entire game. They've done 1 other wound. So yeah, getting 2 wounds, you've got that double up. So we got that. And moving on to turn 6 for the Empire Dust. This is again pretty simple. I take my skeleton horde and my reanimated behemoth and go into the Knight horde. They've already got 6 damage on them. I'm not really looking to kill. I don't think that's in the cards, but if I could get a kill here, that would be great. If I could get, or a kill would be amazing. A waver would be great, and really I just need to make it so they stay over here. So that's the plan. With all my drain life. So I've got drain life ready to finally kill this snail off, hopefully. I've also got a lightning bolt to throw at it. And I move forward with my battle cat plus my enslaved guardian. So the enslaved guardians have actually charged here. I just forgot to move them. Yeah. My opponent knows that they've charged. I said I charge, and I must have just taken this picture before moving them. So they've charged in. My battle cat has just moved forward to throw. The plan is to chuck a rock at this thing, just going for some VPs, and then to surge in here, since I don't really need the heal just yet. And this is at the end of combat. Between my drain life and the skeletons and all that, I end up doing another 6 wounds to these. I get an 11, which I think that these guys are 23, 25. Get that waiver. So that is super lucky. Poof. Yeah, that basically clinches the game for the Empire Dust, at least I think, even if there's a turn 7. I don't end up... Oh no, I didn't drain life these guys. I drain life the snail. My drain life does not do a whole lot to the snail, although I think I did waver him again. It seems like I did. I wavered him a lot. Battle Cat plus the other enslaved guardians easily kill off the lane bowman, so and Battle Cat hit the stupid siege artillery with his rock again with a 6, does 5 wounds to it and just wipes that out. So MVP this thing. But yeah, the only thing left on the table is the horde, or I guess there are 2, the horde and the snail, and I believe both of them are wavered right now. No, the snail's not wavered. That's right. Yeah, that's right. The snail is not wavered. And again, I lined up a cool little kill line right to the rear of my unit. If there's a turn 7. And there is. So turn 7. Turn 7, Brotherhood, pretty easy. These knights can't charge. We forgot to bounce these units back, but I think the knights would have bounced because the cat can't bounce as this wizard is blocking them. And under the new FAQ, you have to be equidistant when you bounce back. So I think these guys bounce. But anyway, Snail goes into Mortibrus, who this time it's purposeful. I decided to just... I thought it might be fun if the snail kills off 2 of my individuals and rear charges my skeletons or reanimated behemoth. You know, just fun. But more, you know, there's fun and then there's fun. Mortibrus is still very difficult to take out. He's a 15-17, so put him in the front. And my opponent goes for it, does 6 wounds to Mortibrus, but doesn't roll the 11 needed to kill it, and in fact doesn't even roll the 9 to scare me. So Mortibrus ready to fight back with his 1 attack. And here is turn 7 for the Empire Dust. You can see the Brotherhood are gone. So yeah, I end up taking a flank charge with these enslaved guardians. I charge the skeletons and the reanimated behemoth back into the horde bowmen, and then we walk back. Battle Cat here is in the flank of the snail, goes for that, and I've got some drain life, which I think goes into the knights. But yeah, end of the day, there are no Brotherhood left, so I treat them just like Ronnie does and wipe them the fuck off the table. Anyway, in all seriousness, great game, very interesting, because the first few turns were super against me. I mean, I just deployed so poorly, and my opponent was rolling pretty well, and so it looked like I was just gonna lose on those 2 merits, right? Like I couldn't escape my own deployment zone, and you know, I was getting diced pretty hard, and by diced I mean that he was rolling. Dicing doesn't just mean that my opponent, you know, it's like, it's all 6s. I mean that he's rolling well instead of while I need him to be rolling poorly because of my own stupidity, right? Like I needed him to roll poorly to make up for the fact that I misdeployed. But anyway, so that was the first 2 turns, and then things started to shift quite wildly, and that's really the power of Surge. So I think the army is and at the end of the day, the score is 2, 5, and 6. I don't think this cat is 50% in. So I've got 6 unit strength to my opponent's 0. So where this blackjack, I think it's a 21 because I've lost quite a few points. Anyway, my thoughts on the army, I'll probably play it again or some variation on it. I'm really enjoying playing with the reanimated behemoths. I don't really think there is as good as like Bone Giant plus Bone Dragon, but they are interesting. I like using Balefire catapults. I like having a bit of a range when I play games. So yeah, it's been fun to play them. We'll see about the Drain Life in the future. If you have any thoughts on how you use the monolith, I've not played it since beta testing for this army. So yeah, if you have any thoughts, feel free to leave them in the comments. And until then,